Well, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. This is the NIA boys. We got Trung Phan, me, Master Flex himself, Jack Butcher, Visualized Value founder, and I'm Bilal Zaidi. Boys, it is Thanksgiving week. I'm out in sunny California, as you'll see from you can't see from my background, but I'm in a different location. We're going to talk about some deep stuff this week. We're going to get an update on Ken Griffin winning this crazy Constitution auction that we talked about last week. We're going to talk about Hollywood and decentralization, how it will improve Hollywood, and some ideas around that. We're talking about Adidas and the metaverse, aka Adiverse. And we're going to talk about why Thanksgiving is more expensive this year, why turkeys... Well, actually, I'll save the explanation. But go on.
Everybody would have eaten anyways, right? It might not have been for everybody, and we'll talk about why. But
they'll know by the time they're listening to this. They would have done the shopping at Costco, like Jack was doing this week, sending it in the Telegram group. How's it going, boys? What's been going on with the Thanksgiving week? What's going on there?
Trung, you've done it already this year, right?
Canadian Thanksgiving's a month ago.
We talked about this. Canada just front runs America for all the holidays. So Thanksgiving is 6 weeks before American Thanksgiving. And then Canada Day, July 1st, is 3 days before the 4th of July. Let's think about that. That's what you do when you're the smaller brother in the relationship. You got to find the edges where you can, right?
Think about it.
I like the way you're like, think about this is taking someone down a YouTube rabbit hole now. This is being picked up in that category.
Well, I was going to answer the question, but the front running is a perfect tee up for the Ken Griffin bit on the Constitution.
My goodness,
literally front running. Yeah, just a summary, I guess. Look, by the time people listen to this, we had to record this a little earlier last week because it's Thanksgiving. So you already know Ken Griffin won the auction. The Constitution DAO crew, which includes my tiny little donation, didn't win. And it came out like everyone was a little disappointed. And then a few hours later, it comes out that Ken Griffin, the founder of Citadel, won, right? And we were group chatting about this. So let's first of all explain who Ken Griffin is and how significant it is. Who wants to take that one?
That's you, Trung.
Right. Well, let me actually say one thing first. So this is right now one of the downsides of our recording pace. Because how fast Constitution DAO happened, by the time people hear this, the Ken Griffin thing would have been 10 days ago. And it feels like old news, but still new to us. Having said that, the reason I'm bringing it up is this. Listen, people, if you want us to be recording and spitting stuff out like within 12 to 24 hours, we're going to start needing to see some people being like, yo, where's the DAO? I know you've been saying we need more drum beat. Put the reviews on Apple, hype us up on YouTube. Like, we're not feeling the full love right now. We're feeling a lot of love. But we're not feeling the, hey, let's turn this around in 24 hours love. I mean, if you guys want me to live stream with Jack and Bilal 5 days a week, it's on the table. We just need to know how serious our audience is.
That's true.
Because right now, our audience seems to be pretty happy with this 10 days later Ken Griffin pace.
To be fair,
that's what you guys want?
To be fair, this is extra delayed because of Thanksgiving.
Well, it's also that news was so insane, right? Like that thing happened so quickly. All right, so quick recap for anybody that hasn't been listening. There is, I'm sure, some subsection of it. There's a small group of internet folk, about 30 people. They formed a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. A couple definitions of that is basically like a new corporate structure that's governed by smart contracts and on the blockchain, or popularly known as a group chat with a bank account. So that one I really like. That's a really good explanation. Because a lot of these DAOs are starting in Discords, right? So there's your group chat, and then they use this software platform called Juicebox where you take Ethereum donations. Anyways, they raised $47 million to bid on the U.S. Constitution. And as Bilal alluded to, the winner was Ken Griffin, the CEO and founder of Citadel Securities. And Citadel Securities is the moneymaker, and Citadel Management is the investment management firm. Could you just explain
real quick? Because one's they're a hedge fund and a market maker, basically, right? What's a market maker for people who don't know what that is?
So a market maker, their job in the stock market is just to be on either side of the trade, right? They're keeping things moving. So like basically, if I wanted to sell Tesla, I wouldn't. A lot of times, I don't want to have to go out and find a buyer of Tesla, right? So what you do is go to the exchanges, and the market maker's job is actually keep that market liquid. So they'll buy and sell they'll take either side of a trade, but they take a little bit of the spread on each trade. So they do just massive trading volumes, right? But if you take a couple basis points off each trade, but you're providing liquidity in exchange for providing the liquidity, you make a shit ton of money. Just to speak about how much money they make, Ken Griffin is worth $20 billion. He's the richest person in the state of Illinois. And if the name sounds familiar, it's because earlier in the year, Citadel was one of the main players in the GameStop Wall Street Bets fiasco. And what basically happened was that a lot of the Redditors and Wall Street Bets folk thought that Citadel was stymieing their trades around GameStop, basically telling Robinhood that, hey, you have to stop selling and buying of this asset because we can no longer manage the risk. Basically, the TLDR is this: as a market maker, you demand collateral because there's something known as a T+3 in trading. So probably familiar with this. Is like when you execute a trade, it doesn't settle. I think it's 2+2 actually for 2 days later. So basically in that 48-hour time span, there's credit risk. There's risk of counterparty, right? There's counterparty risk. So the market maker's job is to manage the counterparty risk. And in most cases, they can handle that liquidity. But in this case, it was so insane. It was so extreme that they went in. It wasn't just Citadel, some other market makers that had to basically tell different brokerages that we don't trust the collateral you're putting up. So we're just going to tell you to stop letting these trades happen. That is the overarching story. Some people disagree with it. They think there's collusion. So basically, the whole point of that is Ken Griffin is hated by
He's
millions.
The big bad boss of the game, of the online game right now. Like the hated. Robinhood game.
He's hated.
Isn't there one other component to this of them? There's a exchange of data that happens between Robinhood specifically and Citadel, right? Trade data.
Right. So exactly right. So Robinhood's business model is forwarding. They get payment for order flow. So they get all this information about the orders that are coming in, and they forward it to Citadel to execute. And then to Jack's point, is like that all the information. So technically, you could quote unquote front run these trades. But I mean, what I will say to Citadel's effect is like that is such a dumb way to do it. Mainly because you can already make a multi-trillion, $1 billion business just from your existing business model. Why do something so obviously illegal? And I mean that actually was, for decades, people thought that Bernie Madoff was front running. That's how they thought his hedge fund was, or which was really a Ponzi scheme, was making 15% a year every single year. They thought because he was a chairman of the NASDAQ, which is insane, right? So they thought that mental. I know. So it's like, he had a company that was a market maker. So like, it's like Jack said, it's like he knew what was going on. So people thought, and that's a really good thesis, right? That's actually why a lot of people were like, they couldn't believe how even simpler his Ponzi scheme was. They thought they had the answer. They're like, he's front running. But it's like, no, it's not even that difficult. This guy literally had a checking account with $10 billion in it. was like paying people out every month and getting money in. It was like the most unsophisticated thing in the world. But they had this layer, to Jack's point about what people thought about Citadel. So again, the whole thing why this is hilarious is that Ken Griffin's been shit on by the internet and young people, like memes everywhere. Redditors probably like, this is kind of, not cool, but like threatening him, right? And then out of nowhere,
probably not cool. To clarify, it's not cool.
Okay, not cool.
Yeah.
But what's funny, last week, and you guys would have heard of it right before Thanksgiving, Jack basically said it. Jack called it. Jack Butcher / Jack Kramer, aka Jim Kramer for NFTs. He said it himself. Jack, what did you say? I said to you, oh my God, this is amazing. I've never seen so much energy around a thing. And Jack's like, well, actually, they're signaling to other buyers what the market is, and they can just come right over top. I mean, that's what you said.
Isn't that like number one rule in the auction is no one should know what you're willing to bid, right? So I think, to be fair, I do think the last stage of the public fundraise, like I remember like on the day or the day before,
they quieted it down.
They burned it down at 40, so you didn't know, but I guess you could kind of estimate by that point.
You could see it on Juicebox, I think they just took it off the homepage.
Oh,
it's transparent. Like it's a multi-sig wallet, right? So you could just look at the address on Etherscan and see where the money is going. So yeah, that's
Jack called it. You called it.
And it's the irony of like the relationship between Robinhood and Citadel and this being basically exactly the same thing. Like, you know how much it's going to trade for. So you can like have a cheat code essentially. And like, I don't know, bidding up the price of it Man, I was so shocked at the estimate price too, like 20 million for the.
Oh my god, dude!
Like, you thought it sounded low, right?
Yeah, it sounded crazy. It's like for what you even saw. Like, I watched the whole auction before that, so it was like 20 or 21 pieces of contemporary art, and they're selling for a good percentage of what the estimate of the Constitution was, and just seems like, ridiculously insignificant in comparison. Sorry to whoever that was, but it's like, this is just like on a different level of historic significance.
Yes.
It's fascinating to see it. And then, I think it's kind of, there's kind of two different mentalities entirely. Like, there was this like, we're all going to make it, let's pool our capital together and we're going to buy the Constitution, it's going to be great. And then there's just like this cutthroat auction, like, back and forth, I'm going to outbid you. And I think they couldn't even come in. We talked about this last week. Is like, I don't even think they could bid with the full amount, right? There's a 25% buyer's premium, and then there's like insurance and all the
transportation, storage. No, you're right.
They
exactly.
Must have winged the calculation of in a couple of days. Credit to whoever put that together, but it's still like, it might have been for the best that didn't come off that way, right? Because it was so fast and so nuts. And now there's all this debacle of like what to do with the money. The average donation was $200, and the gas fees to get your money back is going to cost you $190.
Yeah.
Well, tell me what you guys think about that. And then I'll give my thought. I'd love to hear you guys' thought. My thought is this. This was the headline from the article. Half of the 18,000 donators won't even get their money back. I literally just looked at it. I'm like, bro, first of all, you're trying to buy the Constitution. It's all in there. It's called a donation. If you're putting $200 into this, guess what? That's like going to watch Avengers for $200. That's how much entertainment you got out of it. That was my instinct. I'm like, bro, you're complaining? Bilal, are you mad? Bilal, when you lose your $200.
I just assumed this guy, I didn't put that much in. It was probably
what is going on here? Having said that, they probably should have been way more clear about that. And you know what? This is the first time. That's my only thought. I'm like, bro, this is the greatest entertainment you could have gone for $2.
It's well worth it. Yeah. One of the things that was significant about it is like, I think it was like 25% of the people that donated were brand new wallets. Or maybe that's legit. Too high.
I think it was a significant amount either way.
That's great. And don't quote me on that number, but the idea that these people are having that shit of an experience with crypto, their first time using it, is not great either. So it's like, oh yeah, I got involved in that Constitution DAO thing. I donated some money. I transferred it over from Coinbase and then just set it all on fire. It's like, I think it's also really hard to pivot from that very singular focus, right? It's like, if you're going to keep your money in there, what are they going to do with it? And technically, I don't know, this is all speculation, not investment advice, not legal, etc. But like, somebody has custody of those assets now, and they have to make some sort of decision as to how to steward it. But I think they have a reasonable idea of like the intention of the people that donated. So, could go to charity, could go to like some other similar function in like displaying a piece of like a historical artifact. So I'm sure they'll figure it out. But yeah, that's like, it's not a good look for the people that are like being onboarded into the space. And that's a bigger discussion in general. Like $200 to like complete a transaction is just kind of mental.
Yeah, completely. One thing I was going to add is, I think, I've heard that online anyway, they were talking about being able to vote or something like that, or giving people options if they want to keep it in or if they want to claim it back or whatever. But it kind of brings up the bigger question of, we've talked about this on the pod before, which is like, there's all these things you can do, and sometimes using Web3, crypto, NFTs, etc., can solve a real problem, but often you don't need the blockchain to solve this. And I think in this case, this was quite a unique use case, and people didn't have to do KYC, and they didn't have to sign up in the US with a bank account. So there was a benefit to doing this kind of DAO structure. At the same time, like there was a meme going around that this was, like crowdfunding with a new name, right? Which has been around, and also like a transaction that shouldn't cost you $100, $150 to put 200 in this case. So, I think we touched on that in the charity one as well, because sometimes the best thing isn't to do something on the blockchain. But I think here the story wouldn't have worked without it being this kind of hot topic, right? Like this wasn't just a normal crowdfunding thing.
It was the perfect storm. It was just, we talked about last week. We're like, the setup was just so beautiful from a meme standpoint, right? Like legitimately, not beautiful. Like, hey, I'm glad like people torched $200, right? I'm just saying the setup was just like, I mean, we just talked last week. I'm like, when I heard the setup, I'm like, oh, I get this. Like you immediately get it, right?
The other thing I was going to add is specifically with Ken Griffin and Citadel, and I'm definitely no expert on like how their setup works, but even more than the Robinhood stuff, in a way, crypto is basically going after like their sort of setup, right? Like they are the market maker. Crypto allows me and you to become a market maker, literally using the same phrase, liquidity provider on DeFi. You're basically becoming that middleman the way they are. They are the middleman, right? Like when a transaction goes through, they are the middleman. So it's just like a perfect, I mean, like, you know, it's amazing. It's like the big boss of the internet.
Well, Jack, let's ask Jack. Let him apply his meme mindset to what Bilal just said. What was Ken Griffin's play here? Did he want the U.S. Constitution, or was it like Bilal just mentioned? He's just like, hey, you know what? There's this whole crypto thing that might, disintermediate me. Why don't I just take a shit on the entire front lawn?
I think he's a pretty like vocally opposed to most facets of crypto. At least I did a little bit of research, and it's like he's on record saying like this is, you know, he hates it unless he's changed his mind on that. I don't know. I would say. The question is like, was he a bidder before Constitution DAO was involved?
Yeah, that's a good.
I'm gonna say no.
Way to frame it.
I'm gonna say no. I think he got in there to like
rub it
flex on him. Yeah.
Be like, just to let him know. By the way, I've been doing this. I think that's fair.
Well, you know what else is interesting? Like, I was thinking about how you could make the DAO more like. Or make it more true to the like on-chain execution or the Web3 execution. Do you remember the Banksy piece that sold at Sotheby's and then shredded itself?
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah.
Badass piece of work. Like imagine if you bought the Constitution and then you like scanned it in, turned it into an NFT and destroyed the original. And then you distribute ownership of that with your token approach. Obviously that's going to get some headline. That's going to get some news too. If you like destroyed a $40 million document, put it on chain. But we talked about this last week. Like the infrastructure, it didn't make like technical sense maybe, but it made like mimetic sense. Like that's how they raised 40 million in 3 or 4 days, because also the normalization of like paying $1,000 for like a cartoon raccoon or something is like, oh yeah, Constitution for $200. That seems like a no-brainer.
I think that's the messaging, right? It was like it was a donation. Like you were not getting fractional ownership of the Constitution, which is some of the criticism.
And somebody was, but I think they did a amazing thing. Thank you.
One last point about Ken Griffin, and then if you guys had more thoughts, happy to hear those. But this is my wrap up. He was trading stocks and commodities and FX in his dorm room at Harvard. He set up like a satellite outside his room. So people, this is who we're going up against. This is not some schlep on the street here. I love it. He flexed on him so hard, man. Flexed on all of us, bro.
I think he's a pretty sophisticated investor, bro. Like he's not just messing around for sure.
I wonder if he's like on Wall Street Bets. He's probably got like a anonymous account on Twitter. Yeah. I'm fascinated by this whole anonymous account stuff because I think Zuck must have been in the mix in the like crypto Twitter with an anonymous account.
Oh my God, you're right, man.
I reckon everyone operating at this level is
Jack, talk through it, man, because you. You're very involved in kind of a crypto Twitter. And there's so many anonymous accounts, right? Like we talk about some of them out here, like Punk6529, Count Madid. Like, tell me about. So you think these guys are all, as our friend Tom Osmond said, they're all giga whales. And
I think there's a lot of people who are like really, have huge reputations in the fiat world that are just like doing a
fiat world.
Bilal Zaidi. We've got 500,000 followers.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think there's also like you can get way stronger like product or, narrative market fit anonymously. Kind of an interesting, the cost of being yourself anonymously is, you're taking far less risk and, reputational risk, right? If you have an anonymous account, if you're like affiliated with a financial institution, particularly, like there are things you can't say and do and like endorse. But man, some of these anonymous accounts on Twitter, the engagement and the networks that they've built are just insane. And
right, the ones where they link their holdings to, so you're just like, oh my goodness, right?
Yeah, and I think it's proof that like I think it kind of disproves some of the things that maybe were believed to be true a couple of years ago, which is like authenticity isn't necessarily about like your face and your name. It's about how you communicate and how consistent you are in like, your behavior kind of. And I think like, I almost regret not like figuring that out or trying that out early on. And it's so native to like the ethos and the philosophy of crypto that people who got into that space early, majority of them care about privacy and, like not divulging certain things about their life. And it happens to double as like a really good way to build a network too. It's like almost going back to we're similar ages. When you first used the internet, you wouldn't have your name in like whatever AOL chat rooms or whatever.
Emporium.
Yeah.
Zaidi's Emporium.
Bling Bling King 786. That was literally my eBay username. No
That's
lie.
Sick. Yeah,
Bling Bling King.
I could see that with 500,000 Twitter followers.
Yeah. But what I was going to say, actually, speaking to you two guys who have obviously spent a lot of time building your Twitter accounts out, like, have you guys thought about creating a, like a more anonymous one? Or obviously, I don't know I guess it wouldn't be anonymous if you said you had it, but like, yeah.
I have.
Have you got anonymous ones?
It was, it's not anonymous, but like I tried doing, you guys will know, like I tried to do a very niche category. I tried to make a meme account for dad jokes. And just because I knew I could crank those out, right? It's because, man, nobody wants to hear, like, you guys will understand, like, you don't want to mix messages in the feed, right? Because it kills the virality or the growth prospects for
the depth of like that engagement, right? Like,
but if you just go straight dad jokes, because there are some pretty big dad ones actually. The Dad at the Dads, I think like 2 millions across all social. And I think they got bought for like quite a bit of money as part of a larger contingent. But if you go super niche, we'll take liquidity, right? The funniest fucking finance jokes. And it's built that audience. He's built a massive business out of it, right? With his newsletter, Exec Sum. I've definitely tried it. It is fun. I didn't go very far, but yeah. So that's.
But do you miss, like, what made you not keep doing it?
It's just because running it's a consistency, right? I was posting 2-3 times a day, and actually, you guys will laugh. The way I was growing it was real old school. I was doing the whole follow unfollow thing, so I'd follow up to the max every day, which is like 400 or 500, and then Twitter starts throttling you, right? They're like, okay, this is a freaking bot, like, or they cap you at how many you can do a day. So I was literally following 500 people a day. 20% would follow back, and then so I get 100 a day, and then Twitter basically says, hey, there's a lot of suspicious activity going on this account. So then you're shut down for like 2 days and then you're back at it. And it's just not a great way to grow the account.
Jack's rolling his eyes. I want to hear Jack's take on.
Well, I've done that, man. I remember when I first started like my agency accounts, and that's what I would like. You go on the hashtag and you like every single picture in the feed for like whatever the hashtag is. That is the most brutal way to like grow anything. And like the people who are engaging on the other side of that, it's like, obviously the connection isn't as strong as them discovering you organically. But as you were talking, Trung, I was like, I think this is kind of maybe this is going to be more of a concept in Web3 where people sort of like, you sort of decentralize your identity a little bit. So you have all these different interests or all these different like, I've definitely got things that I am, things that I'm interested in that that wouldn't necessarily like bring into the feeds of my personal Twitter at the moment. And that has to be a behavior, I think, where a lot of people just find find like a little sliver and go deep in there. And I think like crypto Twitter is a good example of like the nichest of niche humor, right? Like the Island Boys, freaking Cameo requests, Hardrock, Nick, all of that kind of stuff, where you have like, you're spending $50 on this video and it's like, how is there a market for this? But there's like thousands of people.
Can you talk more about Hardrock, Nick? Because you frequently send us videos of this guy. What's his
Jack, every time it's
I still don't know.
So this dude, I don't like. It's really hard. I haven't wrapped my head around it completely, but I think this guy was like, you know, he's got a reasonable sized Instagram following. He's like pretty out there dude. And there's this one video that I think like skyrocketed him to popularity on crypto Twitter. He opens the video and he's like standing there with like this really, you know, he's got this like really what would you even call it? Like his facial hair is like styled in the most like outrageous way you can possibly imagine. It looks like Wolverine or something. And he's standing, he's like videoing himself in the mirror. He goes, "I got a question for all my haters at home. Where am I and where are you? I'm on Rodeo Drive shopping for a Rolls Royce,
Incredible.
a $500 beanie, $600 belt. Don't let me remind you about my 14 bank accounts." And he opens his just a like complete like troll video. And then that kind of just started circulating around, you know, crypto Twitter, because people are talking about money all the time. And it's just like a funny meme that goes along with that. And then the guy got a Cameo account and people started, you know, commissioning him. Some of the funniest stuff is like they'll take a tweet and get him to read it out. So it like gives this like layer of personality to a tweet. So the one I think I sent to you is like, "Guys, I need the price to go up right now. I've been checking the price, and every time I check the price, this price is down. The price is dipping." What does he say after that? He's like, "I've overinvested by a lot. It is what it is, but I need the price to go up." So this is just like a recurring meme. I think someone paid him to read the Ethereum white paper out, which is like a
goodness.
That's hilarious.
But mate, he's just
he's minting. He's minting.
He must be up like literally dawn till like the middle of the night recording these things.
But six figures easily.
Yeah.
It's legit, right?
Yeah, I would say he's definitely got to be taking down $1,000 a day at least. I don't even know what it costs to hire him, but he's doing them back to back, man. And this is like, we've talked about this in the private chat. It's like kind of I think it's a crazy arbitrage opportunity. Cameo in general, like there are these huge personalities, and you know, Hardrock Nick in his own niche for sure, but there's like A-list celebrities that will record a message.
Island Boys.
Yeah, exactly. Pumping some like, this is getting into everything that we've talked about in this podcast in the last few weeks, is like, what is the like ethical and legal implications of like somebody who people have like trust for reading off some script, but they have no idea what they're saying? Like the guy that plays Logan Roy in Succession, what's his name? Brian.
The actor? Yeah. Logan Roy. Yeah,
he's the main, like
the main
guy,
geezer
right?
in Succession. He like, I saw one of him the other day. I think I sent it to you boys. This is like, we're all gonna make it. Buy like WGMI coin, and like he's just saying it. I'm sure he has no clue what he's saying. And you know, not that anyone's gonna take that incredibly seriously, but there is some like weird like crossover moment there where you can. We talk about deep fakes and all of this stuff where you can borrow the like trust or borrow the like significance of a personality to plug a message in a way that isn't like mediated as it was before, where you go through an agency and they have a manager and they're just opening an app and reading a script. It's pretty crazy.
Well, have you guys ever seen screenshot essays? Is like these short essays about tech and business. You might have seen these before.
No, it sounds good though. No.
Yeah, I've seen
I mean, you've seen them, Bilal? I mean, he had a really good one about fame and how, like, it's Jack, to your point now, is like when you do something, when you have your 15 minutes of fame, like let's say 20 years ago, it would just be 15 minutes.
That's it. You're done. Yeah.
Right. You're done. It was like the kid with the broomstick in the garage doing the spinny stuff and like got eviscerated by the internet. Like he's done. He has his 50 minutes, it's over. But now, because like you said, you got these direct relationships. If that guy did the 50-minute spinny, he'd be like the cranberry juice TikTok skateboarder guy, right? Yeah. You have a direct relationship now and you have Cameo. So basically what happens is like that 50 minutes of fame, it actually can be a full life now.
Yeah, we can coin a term on the pod, long tail fame.
There you go, man. Let me make sure. Hold on.
Coining a term. I like that. Yeah.
Hold on. Let me make sure they didn't coin it already.
.eth. Yeah. And the .ptc. I love
it. But you can't get any more ENS airdrops, right?
No.
We're done. We're done with that.
It's over. Long tail of fame. There you go, right? It's forever. So there it is. Elon replies a couple of my tweets. In the 20 years ago, I'd be done. But now I can just ride this fame forever.
Well, you know what's interesting about it, though, is like, it's kind of it's like niche. Like Hardrock Nick he's got his niche now, and it's like it gets more powerful the more he stays in that niche.
Because there's certain people like, I don't know, Jack Butcher, who would pay any amount of money to hear him talk about anything.
Like we need him to do a not investment advice like pre-roll for sure.
Okay,
why
hold on
would
a
we not
second.
do it? It doesn't make any sense.
Hardrock Nick Cameo. All right, hold on. I'll tell you how much it costs.
Theme tune.
Hold on. Before we move on to the next topic, Bilal, why don't you guess how much Hardrock Nick costs?
$300.
He found it.
He's under 40 US.
Oh, no way. Wow. Damn, we might do that before the end of this call.
Hardrock Nick needs an agent, son.
For real.
He is giving away the bag.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
That's I mean, imagine even if he does 10, 20 of those a day, that's quite a lot of work. But like, I mean, if he's just reading off a screen and most of them
are 15 seconds long.
That's true. Yeah. Killing it.
Hopefully he's stacking them up into the double or triple digits.
Do you know what we should do is if we ever do ads, because I know we've had people reach out to do ads. We haven't done any yet. We just only do the ads through Cameos.
Yeah, that's correct.
So we don't even read them. No, I feel like we could do some pretty funny ads as well. So I don't want to rule that out, but we should just get Island Boys and these guys to read out the ads. So we just transition to them. That'll be fun.
Well, Nick Huber's Bromato thing, he got the Island Boys to plug it.
I saw that. Incredible.
That was very well played. I got to give it to Nick. That was like one of the strongest things you can do on the internet is get eviscerated because you get the viral fame out of it, but then embrace it, right? Oh my goodness, good for him, man. That was amazing. Well,
we'll have to do come back to that after it's played out for a week or so.
We might have to get Nick on to ask him to explain the Bromato.
Full disclaimer is that he dropped me a Bromato. I'm probably gonna have to tweet about it later, but full disclaimer.
Wait, so that means you have a Solana wallet?
Yeah, he's like, I opened it because he's like, hey, dude, I'm doing this thing. I'm like, all right, here,
advanced moves, man.
Is it rare? Have you checked it out yet?
I don't know how rare it is. I don't know what the rules of rareness are. I'm not versed in OpenSea, but we can talk.
Hey, you could be a billionaire sitting here right now.
Yeah, it could be. If that's the case, I really enjoyed these 50 or 38 episodes with you guys. And actually, guys, so last thought on Cameo. Actually, I had the opportunity to interview their chief business officer, Arthur. Forgot his last name. Really nice guy. I asked him. I'm asking him. The devil's advocate question. I'm like, man, aren't like people going to get sick? Like if Hardrock Nick is doing 1,000 videos, right? Like fame used to be scarce, right? That's just the value of it. I'm like, who's going to want another Hardrock video? They brought up a good point. He's like, well, actually every interaction is literally new and different, right? So like, these are like, they are still scarce because that's one piece of content that is directed at somebody. Yes, they paid for it, but like if he shouts out your name or he's reading the Ethereum white paper, that's basically a one of one, right? Like you can pay again to do that. I'm sure that happens, but like the idea of just being like, if it's super personalized, like that is a very small niche. It's very like sliver of content that really is kind of unique. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Genius business, man.
It is
completely
genius,
new idea. Unreal.
Would you bet on them? What in 10 years from now, though? What do you reckon, Cameo? Do you think it's going to be around? Do you still think it's going to be? Do you think they're just going to keep evolving to other things, or?
So something that he mentioned to me, which is very true, which actually struck very true to me, was this. He's like, all right, you're Kim Kardashian or you're Kanye West or whatever, your small 100,000 person Twitter account, right?
Pete Davidson.
Yeah, you're Pete Davidson. So you got a couple of things, right? he's like, I want Cameo to be thought of in the same vein as an Instagram, in the sense of like, if you're a celebrity, you're going to have an Instagram account. You're going to have Facebook. You're going to have Twitter. It's another touch point for you to interact with your fans. It's one of many tools that you'll have, but it's extra personalized. You can make extra money from it. And that made a lot of sense to me, right? It's like most of these celebrities have people running their entire social thing anyways, right? And like, what more is it to have like, okay, just manage all my Cameo for me. Tell me how many I have to record. I'll knock off all of them in 5 minutes and make a G. You know what I mean? And I'm like, all right, that makes total sense. It's just another tool for somebody with celebrity to interact with their audience, get paid for it.
I just think there's an interesting like cost benefit, and that like there's a certain tier of celebrity where if people know you're like, you will interrupt your day to make $50 to record a birthday message. It's like it almost makes more sense to do it for free from a brand perspective.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Why, like, you're cashing ridiculous checks for making movies or whatever else at the high end of celebrity. So it's like I think it's just a really interesting, and they've pulled it off, so fair play to them, but it's really interesting to see what that translates to in like real dollars and how that shifts your perception of someone. I remember when Ari Gold, who's the guy that plays Ari Gold?
Jeremy Piven.
Jeremy Piven, didn't he put like a 15-minute Zoom call for like 10 grand? And people went absolutely ape shit over that. Like that was a couple of years ago or something. And I don't know, maybe because, I don't know, nobody thinks that Jeremy Piven's time is worth 40 grand an hour, but it's more like, I mean, I completely understand why. It's basically price it, because if somebody is like desperate enough to pay that, and that's like what would be an absolute no-brainer for me to take 15 minutes out of my day to do this. And it also doesn't hurt my brand as somebody who's trying to land these massive contracts. I think it makes all the sense in the world, but he got eviscerated for it. So, I mean, I don't know what you're going to talk to him about for 15 minutes on Zoom. If you're like, you know, an ultra fan, but it's a fascinating market. Like they talk about NFTs, frozen. What was that thread? I think we talked about frozen asset classes, which the
unlock, when you unlock a liquidity of like cars for Uber,
exactly,
empty rooms for Airbnb.
Yeah, and this is like, time of people who people admire or, you know, are obsessed with in some way. So it makes sense that somebody figured out how to do that. And it's almost like you always think like how many more of these markets can exist, and they keep popping up, man. Someone keeps figuring it out.
All right, boys, let's transition, because this is actually the perfect transition we got. Talking of celebrities going direct to their users. Do you see what I did there? We got Hollywood, decentralization, and Web3. I don't know what we want to talk about here, but Jack had shared a thread where, you know, we wanted to kind of discuss this idea. So Jack, I'll pass it over to you, mate. What was on your mind on this one?
Let me...
Do you want to share the screen?
Yeah, let me pull up a screen share here.
Yeah, I've given you permission.
So the thread is from Roy Price, the former head of Amazon Studios. So he's very deep in the game of trying to create content and dealing with Hollywood. While Jack's pulling it up, the last thing I'll add is when Game of Thrones was popping off a few years ago, Jeff Bezos stormed into like an Amazon studio meeting. He's like, I want my own Game of Thrones. And that's why they spent like $500 million on Lord of the Rings. So there you go.
I can basically skim through this thread, and then Trung's going to have good insight on like the economics of developing content, because I know he's written a lot about that. But Roy Price, Trung, you said the
former head of Amazon Studios.
Head of Amazon Studios. So I know not sure what he was doing before that, but obviously has a good handle on what it takes to develop original content. And the title of this thread he wrote was Web3 and Decentralization Will Improve Hollywood. And the general thesis, as I interpreted it, is by incentivizing the development of content outside of these like hugely centralized studios, you get people to take way more specific shots, and you're much more likely to get great product over good product, because, you know, big studios are, as all big organizations are, like way
risk
more focused on reducing risk than they are developing the most insane product ever. So media is also like the overhead on media is significant, but not in the same way as like developing a hardware product or things of that nature, right? So the infrastructure that can pull people together and align incentives in Web3 to make content feels like, to me at least, less of a lift than like, hey, we're going to design a new iPhone and it's going to like pull together engineers and things of that nature. So that was my interpretation of it. And I think understanding from Trung how some of those relationships work and the economics of the studios operate is going to, add even more color to what he's describing here.
No, I think you nailed the summary. It was like he's basically saying that Web3 and decentralized financing will bring in better content, because to Jack's point, if you think about a Hollywood studio, they basically run like venture capital firms, right? They're making bets across. Call a big studio will do maybe 20 movies a year. So their portfolio of 20 movies, they just need one banger. That's it, right? That's the truth. You one movie to just destroy it, and you will make back that year's budget X-fold, right? That's how they think about it. It's very much a portfolio type of model. But what that means is that you're concentrating your bets into existing IP, sequels, and stuff that, that is why the Avengers and Marvel Universe was so well done. They just stretched that IP as far as humanly possible, right? They made, I think 18 or to 20 films. Somebody put it succinctly, is like, actually, if you look at the Marvel Universe, you should just think of that whole thing as one series. It's like a television show with 20 episodes, right?
It's like the value investing of media, right?
Yeah, it's just like they built that out. So what that means, though, is that you're basically gonna. So in my small attempt at trying to get a really funny movie made, it's so funny. We can talk about that another time. The script I wrote, it's so good. But anyways, we'll talk about that another time. So when we were going through financing, this is 10 years ago, so a little bit different now, but essentially same issue is like studios were looking to make 100 million plus movies. So big action stars, big Hollywood hitters, comic movies, lots of CGI, or movies under 10 mil, right? Everything else is a dead zone. It's because a movie under 10 mil that can travel well, like horror travels internationally because, it's scary, and that kind of atmosphere, it can be subtitled. The language doesn't matter. Like fear can be translated from many different languages, right? And so you're looking at 5 to 10 mil or under, and then 100 million plus. So I think what this relates to Roy Price's thing is essentially that a lot of movies that would have been in the 10 to $100 million range, which is original IP, never done before, outside of what quote unquote works for Hollywood, which is a lot of sequels, a lot of existing IP, those now have a shot at getting funded, because that dead zone can be essentially mediated now by like the way the Constitution DAO essentially got funded, right? It's like you can go straight to the fans and raise maybe 20, 30 million to make one of these films that otherwise would not have been made. And the point he brings up is Squid Game. He said Squid Game was in the Hollywood circuit or film circuit globally for 10 years. Script's been around. Nobody wanted to make it. They said this isn't commercial enough. There isn't appeal for it. But clearly there was appeal for it. And the thinking that went into making that movie never existed and never survived in the Hollywood system, clearly, right? It just never got made. But outside of the Hollywood system, outside of this, hey, major bangers or small movies that can go blow big, there's a chance. And I think the Web3 decentralization, using the Constitution DAO model and take away all the things that went wrong with it, but you could see this stuff happening. People raising 20, 30, 40, 50 mil with the DAO.
I don't know how much this comes into it, because obviously you want some creative control, but you can feel as though you have some agency in the same way that, like, here are the people we want to cast for the lead role, and we're going to put that to a vote potentially. Like that's a really crude example of how you would have people weigh in. But I also think what's cool about this stuff is like maybe it takes you away from pure financial speculation as like funding a piece of art in the same way that, well, I think actually what's interesting about it is I like your framing as a Hollywood studio, as a venture capital, like vehicle, right? They're all products. Like a film is a product in the same way that like a Snuggie is a product. Like you're hoping that you can pay less to make it than you sell it for and sell enough of them to like keep putting money back into the business to make better stuff and hire more people, etc. So that framing is kind of interesting, where you think about if you were, like you said, Trung, you're going to spend $100 to take your family to the cinema to see this movie. Instead, you put it into funding this thing that you're really excited about.
That would be amazing, man.
Yeah, you get to see it first, and you do the first showing and the director's cut and you're behind the scenes. I just think there's like some big unlock there in terms of like people being really invested in like media franchises. And there's one example, it's like really early in the Bored Ape universe. It's called Jenkins the Valet. You guys heard of this?
No.
One of the Bored Apes has an agreement, I believe, with CAA, which I forget what the acronym is, but it's like
something
California Arts, and it's like a firm that represents on-screen talent. Yeah. So they're the people behind that project have raised money, got like members in their DAO. Not sure if they're calling it a DAO, but it is an organization of people that have money in the project, and they're writing a book, they're making a movie, and they're voting on the script, the characters, the plot, and again tapping into a franchise that already exists but might not be executing in this specific space of like making movies. So I think in that world it's going to be way more tied to financial return in a way that, maybe introducing it to an audience that isn't crypto native would be a little different. Like if you wanted to, be along for the ride for the development of the next season of Game of Thrones, you pay for the privilege in the same way that you would like go to a theme park or take buy the toys that go with the movie or the TV show. So yeah, it feels like just a more sophisticated way to get people involved in the process. So we'll see what plays out. But the early iterations of it are obviously like rudimentary. And someone like that acknowledging it, someone who's like running a business of that scale, which is got to be responsible for like a good percentage of the media streamed around the world, like that is a big nod to this being a legit thing.
The potential, yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing I was going to add is, I overall think it's kind of a cool idea. But it kind of comes back to what we talked about before, which is how's that going to be an added benefit to just like a Kickstarter with, you know what I mean? Like, totally. And there has been indie films, where people fundraise and people do feel that ownership from day one, but it's seen as like an initial contribution. And now you artists, talented people go figure it out and we'll see it at the end. Whereas what you described is maybe a little bit more involved. And, like you said, maybe there's stages along the way. People get to vote. They get to feel more involved. It's more of a community-driven, collaborative approach, which in one way is really, really cool. In another way, you could say, well, there's a reason that, world-famous director is the director and you're the watcher.
Yeah. A horse designed by committee is a camel.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, actually, no, but I think, Bilal, you nailed, dude, I just want to address one thing. You brought up such a good point. I actually think I'm like, oh, man, I think Bilal is right here. Like, how's this different than a Kickstarter? I think I just did a quick scroll through his thing, and he mentioned, I think part of it is like in the Web3 world, essentially, when you make these transactions, it's all automatically cataloged, right? It's just like if your identity soon becomes kind of tied in fully into your Web3 identity, is like now you get to see, similar to how you go to somebody's portfolio of NFTs, you get to see everything. Now you get to see the contributions to Jack's charity, the contributions to different movies. Because right now, like, there's not an easy way for you to show. I mean, you can go to profile on Kickstarter, it shows a project that you have funded, but that's not going to be the same in a world where the table stakes is essentially like, hey, listen, everything that you want to show that's been involved in is just right there, and it's easy for everybody to see. It's easily displayed. And we talked about it with the charity, right? It's like, you don't have to be gauche about it and be like, hey guys, look at me. Like I supported a charity. It's like, it's just right there, right? Here's my portfolio of things I'm interested in life. I feel like there's that part of it, but we aren't there in a normalized society yet where like this is better than Kickstarter. To Bilal's point, is like, is it actually better than Kickstarter? I'm not fully convinced either.
And you know what else?
Oh, go on, Jack, go on.
I was just going to say another thing is like, I wonder how open people will be with their media diet.
Yeah.
Like how willing people are to broadcast the fact that they watched all 12 Avengers films. Like in certain circles, that's like what binds like people, and they like consider themselves huge fans, and others would be like, this is a guilty pleasure or something that I don't necessarily want to, you know, tie to my identity. So I think that's another interesting thing about just this whole space in general is like, yes, the portfolio of actions is useful in evaluating somebody's like ability to invest well or pick out trends, but it's also another sort of chalk mark in the column of like pseudonymous identity might win out, because you don't necessarily want this sprawling attachment to things that you wouldn't necessarily like want to broadcast about yourself all the time. Like there is some wall between like who you are as a person, what you enjoy doing in private, and like what you want to broadcast out to the world. Like, you know, it reminds me of like the Farmville things, you know, when the Farmville's like kicking out like 20 quotations a day. It's like, oh my God, how long is that person spending playing fucking Farmville?
It also reminds me of on Spotify, you know, on the right hand side where it says the music you're listening to.
Private session.
Like not everyone wants to know you're listening to Spice Girls at 4 p.m. You know what I mean? Or imagine all your Netflix. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good Spice Girls.
Give us your song.
All of that. I don't know the names, but like as soon as it comes on, I'm singing it, of course. Spice up your life or whatever it is. But yeah, so that's one, and then the other one is like Netflix. If everyone could see you watch Emily in Paris in one session, you know what I mean? How are you gonna feel? You know what I mean?
I don't my YouTube watch history, man. I want to keep that one to myself. I went down some weird rabbit holes.
That'd be just do it on the burner account.
Yeah,
that's it. It's like I was giving one of you two access to maybe Jack because he was adding thumbnails, and I was like realizing I was accidentally using that account to watch my normal YouTube, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't know. I mean, there was nothing crazy in there, but you could easily go down a rabbit hole.
45 hours of Thierry Henry highlights. It's like, Jesus, Bilal, relax, dude.
Could be a lot worse than that, man.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. I had one last thing about this was let's assume that in a completely frictionless world where all the constitution doubt issues were solved, right? Where there's proper governance, you actually get to vote on something. It's clearly defined what you're voting for. And crucially, there's no gas fees. Let's live in that world right now. Perfect frictionless world. You invest in a project. It shows up in your portfolio of things you've invested in. You get to vote on some aspect of it, like what color do you want this scene filmed in? Sepia, right? And then if the movie makes a profit, automatic distribution to all the contributors. So that's that world we're living in. Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's it.
As you're describing that, you know what I think it could be interesting for as well is like the pilot process. You think about just like how fast you can get feedback from a market.
Yeah.
That could be really interesting. It's like the MVP of media can be potentially sped up this way.
That's interesting because pilots for people that don't remember or don't know the full definition is when you launch a TV show, you create the pilot episode. And it's extremely important, right? Because you have to hook people in that first episode. Like the traditional television system is just built around people filming pilots. Like they'll put millions of dollars into making a pilot. And like if that one episode fails, like there's no show, right? But to Jack's point, you maybe spin these up faster. So back to Roy Price's point is that, and something we've been discussing is, if you're a studio producer, right, like a traditional studio producer, think about your incentives. It's the same as Jack alluded to for big business or when Bilal was working at Google. It's like when you're in a comfortable organization of that size, it's like you're not going to be taking 10 out of 10 swings anymore, right? Like you're gonna be happy with a 6 out of 10 product. It's just like, let's keep the ball moving. Let's not have a existential risk or something that could blow up what's going on right now, right? So that means the risks are no longer happening within inside those organizations, which is why big tech acquires so many small startups. Actually, a report came out from these antitrust cases over the past decade. I think the FANG companies, Microsoft, take on Netflix and Microsoft, they've bought, I think, 600 to 700 startups, and most of them are under $10 million. So, like, all the risk is happening outside of the companies, right? So I think what Roy Price is saying is, like, you can start having more of this riskier projects like a Squid Game happening outside the studio system, but now there's liquidity of funding for it because people will be willing, presumably, to pay for it. So we'll see. Again, goes back to Bilal's point, is like, is this actually better than Kickstarter?
And I think what you just said there kind of triggered a thought in my head, which is that does sound better than what is currently here, right? Because the key component added is early stage fundraising. And like right now, you can MVP a pilot on YouTube, right? Like you could put it directly out.
Yeah, exactly.
And you just see if people pick it up. But the problem is, you then need to build the skill set to understand how do I build an audience on YouTube, and how, like that's a whole different skill set versus the creative part. Though I guess even with creating a DAO or like any fundraising effort, then you need to learn the skills for that. So I don't know. I mean, I do like the idea of like building on top of like version 1 of fundraising right now, or like crowdfunding. And I think there is a better version to be made through DAOs or community-driven projects. I just think that's always a question I would ask myself if I was creating it. Is like, what am I doing here that is unique to using blockchain, using DAOs? If it's literally just a story and it gets me impressed, that might be the reason. But I think it needs to be, like, at least you need to think that through. And the kind of last thought I have on this is, we're all obviously fans of this world. But like recently I've been reading a lot of tweets which are like, one day we're all going to see what's it going to be like when everyone can see each other's wallet and we see how much wealth we have? And I'm like, what are you talking about? No, like people are not going to be able to see all. I mean, yeah, you can see Bilal's got a toad on his Twitter profile and like it might be verified with NFT. So, I had at least X amount to buy that, but you're not seeing even, all the private stuff you hold. And it's just, I think people are getting a little in the weeds with it sometimes without questioning like what, how it's actually going to be useful for people. And people are always going to have secret money, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Well, in all your alt accounts, right? Is like, listen, man, here's what I hold, but then my
under the kettlebell,
you know what I mean? Under the
kettlebell. All right, no, that was a good chat. I think definitely a lot of potential there, and we'll follow along. The one thing I will call out, since we just talked about this idea, is that there's a company called Royal.io is the domain name, and they just raised $55 million. And one of the co-founders is the Open Door co-founder, Justin Dross, and the DJ Bilal, I think is how you pronounce his name. I'm such a boomer right now, but 3 LAU. So I think it's pronounced Bilal or something like that. And anyway, so that is an idea we've talked about on the show before, which allows people to have ownership in songs directly with the artist, and they'll earn royalties in the future. So that to me sounds similar to what you're describing there, but for music as an art form versus film. And so I think there's going to be versions of this that we haven't really imagined yet. But so yeah, that's quite a cool development. Let's talk. Was there anything else before we move on to?
I was just going to say, I've not read anything about the Royal thing, but I've been thinking about this a little bit. Like the component parts of a song are pretty interesting when you think about smart contracts and the culture of remixing, where if a beat of a song is incredibly popular, like the behavior right now is people will take it to SoundCloud, take it to YouTube, like produce a version of it by themselves. And I don't know typically if what the royalty structure is for the producer that made that beat originally. So you can imagine a future where like the component pieces of a song have like markets attached to them individually.
Yeah.
So we're talking about like media. I think maybe like the DAO idea of like a bunch of screenwriters and directors and whatever else would have a entity where they like can essentially build products, and then they would interface with like an Amazon to get the distribution. So I think maybe the organization on the creative side, the DAO, is like, okay, let's self-organize here and not let the studio be the arbiter of like the relationships between the people who are producing the thing. We just make the thing, and then Amazon has to pay us.
Oh, that's interesting. That's because obviously so much of the role of a studio is coordinate all the different elements, right? But I mean, again, you're asking like a DAO to coordinate, and again, we're seeing what happened with the Constitution DAO aftermath. So like once those things get sorted.
But that's what I'm saying. Like there's no reason why the coordination talent doesn't become part of the entity that sits outside of the distribution. But who knows, man? Like, I think these guys obviously know what they're doing. And we've talked, I think the best example that sticks in my mind is the iPhone. It's like certain things, to make them amazing, you need like almost a lunatic level of like devotion and direction from the top down. And a lot of people have said like a DAO is not I read a tweet this morning. This guy said a DAO is not a democracy. Like you can set it up with whatever rules you want, right? And I think there's like this strange assumption at this point in time that it's supposed to be this like come one, come all, one person,
everyone
one
gets
vote.
an equal vote.
Well, listen, man, direct democracy is like, well, look at the state of politics in the United States. Everybody every 4 years thinks the other half of the country's an idiot, right? It's like this is
not
like,
every 4 years, just
everything
constantly,
yeah. Well, actually, so I wanted the last thing I want to talk about is because Jack brought it up, and I do think it's so interesting because music copyrights are fascinating. Okay, so let me break. There's 6 components to a single song's copyright, and this is why. Again, we don't want to do to Bilal's point because he's the policeman on this now. You don't want this hand wavy thing saying, "Oh, it's a DAO," right? It's like, how is this better than the existing world, right? And which is such a great point. So each song is broken into 2 main parts. One is the composition of the song, and another is the actual recording of the song, which makes sense, right? One is like, okay, people are writing out what song will sound like, the lyrics, and then the other part's the recording. That makes so much sense. So those are the 2 main parts. And then each of those parts are separated into 3 parts. So that gives you the 6 total. So the composition and actual recordings are now separated into 3 parts called the mechanical rights. This is when it's sold in physical form or streamed. Performance rights, it's played on radio in live concerts. So that's the 2 parts there. And the third part is synchronization rights, movies, films, and games. That's crazy. 6 components of a song copyright. And you've talked about it too, like managing this type of information is very difficult. There's actually a company in Australia that does, they call themselves the LinkedIn of music to kind of manage all these rights. And their pitch is basically that they help people hunt down money that's owed to them. It's called JAXTA, JAXTA. So
just going to say the like amount of slippage in that is insane, right?
Insane, right?
People
but this is where blockchain comes in, right?
Yeah, people have to report on it, honestly. There you go.
Be on chain. Well, no, I think we talked about this once upon a time where I brought up Content ID on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
So anyone who's uploaded a video on YouTube with music, you'll know it goes through this check and it will say this song is present in this thing, in this video. Do you want to... basically, the music label or whoever owns it... there's like 2 options, I think. They can either like monetize your video or block your video because they own the copyright. So nowadays, most of them will just say, automatically monetize. And if you think about the technology of that is actually pretty incredible. There's like a central database that is like Shazam, right? Like the way we use Shazam, but on YouTube. And within like a few seconds, it knows and it handles all the payment side on the back end. But that is for one particular company, right? It's not like for the whole internet and it's not for the world.
Although it is pretty close though, man. I mean, like YouTube's the biggest music player in the world.
Completely. So, but imagine that being everywhere and you're being able to, there has to be a rule that everything played goes through this chain or whether that's the chain or some other technology that's more suited to it, who knows? And we all had the chance to own a little part of that, the way that these guys are trying to make it. I don't even know if that's exactly what they're trying to do, but it seems like that's the kind of bigger vision. But yeah, again, I think, like you said, Trung, it's just figuring out, like, do we actually need this based on the technology, or is it just because it sounds cool? And often, especially in this space, people just say like a massive kind of big vision without really understanding how it would work in the real world. So,
and then they go out and raise $100 million for the idea.
Low shade to Royal. They sound like they're doing some cool stuff. All right.
I mean, boys, Bilal has already done like proof of concept.
He's big into NFTs and stuff, right?
Dude sold a lot of his music as NFT. So it's like, I have, I would say, not investment advice. They have an advantage because one of the founding team has done what they're trying to extend out the ability to do, which is cool.
All right, that was good, man. We're moving along here, boys. What's next?
So the next thing we got on here. So look, it's Thanksgiving week. By the time people are listening to this, they would have had their turkey and they would have spent a G in Costco to feed their 6-person family. So we've all noticed that Thanksgiving is more expensive this year. And I think, Trung, you've been looking at this and going to explain why. And we all know, I feel like it might rhyme
there's no surprises, right?
Money printer goes burr. But so what's going on, man? I know you've been looking at it.
Yeah, there's nothing too crazy. I think it's just worthwhile to talk because everybody already went through it. And you know what? It's not too late because people will be doing the shopping for Christmas season. So, right? Christmas holidays?
That's true, yeah.
Well, first of all, let me ask you, Bilal, what are you doing for Thanksgiving?
I'm just here in Cali. We're just doing normal family vibes here.
Are you cooking?
No, not really. I mean, I did it once already, Friendsgiving, a few weeks ago.
And how was it? Was it pricey?
Yeah, man. I mean, in the end, I ended up buying like pre-made from it's quite funny, a Jewish barbecue spot in Brooklyn.
But delicious.
It was delicious, yeah. And we ordered that and then a bunch of the sides because, we were hosting people for the first time with that many people and it needed a little helping hand. So, that's how I did it. And it was mad expensive. I was like, well, this is like going outside. You know, you might as well take everyone to a restaurant. That's
the thing, man. If cooking, this is the problem with cooking at home. If you're cooking at home and you got to clean the dishes, you got to do all the prep, and it costs just as much as going outside, that's the worst feeling. I hate that. That is like my least favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, you're losing on all accounts.
Yeah, dude, you're tired.
What about the experience, man?
Yo, bro,
enjoy the craft.
Well, Jack, tell us a little bit about your Thanksgiving spendings and your plans. I don't have a ton to talk about on the price, but I want to hear your guys' plans first.
We have family coming in and cooking at home and did the 3-store, get the full list. My wife's mum is a very talented chef and she put a big list together. So we've been out procuring all the items on that list.
Turkey or ham?
And let me tell you, mate, that's not cheap. Turkey.
Okay. How do you guys
steaks
feel
on the side though, just in case?
I got some New York strips from Costco, actually.
Right,
but that's going through the roof, man. The price of those steaks.
Well, there's a joke, right? Jack went in to buy a single turkey, walked out with $1,000 worth of stuff, a vacuum cleaner.
With a vacuum cleaner, exactly.
It's not far off, yeah.
It's not far. Well, again, nothing crazy. It's like we all know supply chains are crammed, like, and money printer goes burr. Everything's just up this year. It's not too bad though. It's like the number from Wall Street Journal is like Thanksgiving meat's up 7%. The sides are up 6%. Pies are up 5%. And apparently the things that have run out, you guys tell me if you got any of this. So pie crust, cream cheese, cranberry sauce, and liquid gravy are the most.
I got some liquid gravy.
Supply. You got it?
Oh, yeah.
What about pie crust? You guys got the pie crust in there?
I'm pretty sure we got everything. I'll have to double check on the cranberries. I'll give you an update next week on the cranberries. But other than that, I think we got it.
Then the other thing, now that we just walked through why it's pricier, no surprises, we could talk about Butterball turkey. Oh my goodness, guys.
What is that?
Are you guys familiar? Butterball. It's probably the turkey.
It's a turkey brand, right?
It's a turkey brand.
Okay, I didn't know that.
No, you don't know the turkey. Okay, so listen. Oh my goodness, man. So Butterball sells 1 in 3 turkeys in America. All right. And Americans eat 40 million turkeys a year. So these guys are selling 10 million turkeys plus a year. And they will have the busiest phone line this week. They run the Butterball turkey Thanksgiving line. So they expect to field 100,000 calls. They have over 150 experts for like cooking and like chef recipes to explain people how to freaking like use stuff. But what's interesting this year is
they haven't go back. They said they're going to field 100,000 calls.
100,000 calls. Their claims.
I didn't know this existed. That's like the turkey hotline.
Yeah, the turkey hotline, dude. So I mean, here, put it this way. I mean, you said Celia Mom's a very good cook, but we know how hard it is to cook a turkey properly, man. It's fucking hard,
so
dude.
much effort, man.
It's so much effort, bro. It's so long, the basting, and like you don't want to that's the thing that's scariest with me with poultry. That's why I don't personally like cooking poultry. You don't want to give people whatever salmonella or eagle eye because, man, dude, undercooking freaking poultry, it happens a lot.
You gotta get
right?
that temperature to gauge in there.
Yeah, that's true. You gotta
throw it in, give it a little poke. But anyway, so Trung, one question though. You did say last year they got smaller. Turkeys got smaller.
Yeah, so about? A couple of things. Well, last year, because of COVID, the restrictions were in place, right? So there's huge demand for smaller birds because people are like, why are we going to get a Costco turkey for 20
12 people? Yeah. We're just two of us having a turkey.
Two of us having a socially distant Thanksgiving. But what happened, and this is actually very interesting, was over the last 5 years or so, and this speaks more to like the U.S. economy and like agriculture and the U.S. consumer, the actual small bird totally went out of style. Nobody wanted to buy small birds, right? And farms they're like, why are we going to spend all this time into making a small bird? We can plump up the chickens in our, disgusting like factory farm methods and sell fat chickens, right? So small chickens totally went out of the door. And it makes sense. Nobody wanted them. And but that caused a squeeze last year because everybody wanted them and there was no inventory for it. And that was pretty interesting. But this year everybody's back to large turkeys, as Jack has alluded to. And then the last thing I'll say about Butterball is they make $1.5 billion a year.
Just selling turkeys, killing the game.
Selling turkeys, man. Unreal.
That's mad.
Right?
That's mad.
So that's all I got on Thanksgiving.
All right. So, but overall, I feel like the numbers you said sounded lower than some other ones I read.
1.5 billion doesn't sound that many, right?
No, sorry, not that. Sorry, I was saying the price of stuff overall. Maybe the poultry and the sides and stuff aren't as high, but I don't know. It just feels. I was feeling like everything was way up more.
Oh, you're feeling like
is not insignificant though.
Right, but Bilal is probably paying. Bilal also.
He's in Brooklyn too.
Yeah.
yeah. That, to be fair, I was getting my from the guys at Polkies. They were sending that. I had to go pick it up myself as well. Madness.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know, man. Yeah, either way, it seems like even just speaking to regular folks recently over the last few weeks who aren't like following the types of inflation and deflation or the stuff we talk about in here, they've been saying, "Oh, didn't realize stuff has got so expensive," and I mean. I'm pretty sure people are actually noticing it this time around.
Yeah.
Dude, I went to a Korean restaurant last week and they literally doubled the price of their short rib dish. I just rolled in there and I'm like, you guys aren't even, what's going on here? What happened? It's wild, right? You guys probably
restaurants have definitely been up, because of, and they're also struggling to get
labor
staff.
Yeah.
And then the prices go up. Yeah. So it's a tough one, man. All right, boys. Yeah, well, look, I think we can keep the Adidas Metaverse stuff for the next one. We can talk about that. But for everyone listening, happy Thanksgiving. Hope you enjoyed it last week by the time you hear this. And anything to say to listeners, boys, before we wrap up?
No, I'm good, man. Again, this would have come out before Thanksgiving if we were getting the proper signals from the market. But instead, you guys are getting a belated Thanksgiving. So happy belated Thanksgiving and appreciate
Trung heavy-handed here, son. Yeah, you gotta let them know. Jack, anything else?
I'll just echo Trung's sentiment there. We're ready to step on the gas. We just need some acknowledgement of the acknowledgement of the appetite for that frequency. So we know we're just suggesting this now, but if we're gonna start doing that, we love some affirmations.
There we go. We need a pat on the back as well, like anyone else.
There we go.
All right, boys. Well, thanks again for listening. This is not investment advice, and we will see you on the next one. Cheers.
Peace out, everyone.